The thunderous crack of lightning split the evening sky as Josephine Taylor's wagon sank deeper into the mud, her hopes of reaching Silver Creek before nightfall washing away with the rain. The young woman of 22 summers clutched her sodden shawl tighter around her shoulders, the April deluge of 1875 showing no signs of mercy as she surveyed the broken wheel and the frightened horses that pulled her modest wagon across the Montana territory. "Easy now," she whispered to the team of 4 as they stamped nervously, ears flattened against their heads. The storm was worsening, and she was still miles from town with darkness approaching. Josephine had traveled west from Boston following her parents' passing, answering an advertisement for a schoolteacher position in the growing town of Silver Creek. Everything she owned was packed in this wagon, along with her beloved piano that her father had insisted accompany her to bring civilization to the frontier. Now, stranded on this muddy road, civilization seemed a distant memory. Another flash of lightning illuminated the rain-soaked landscape, followed almost immediately by a deafening boom of thunder. The horses reared in fright, their panicked whinnies piercing through the storm's roar. "Whoa! Steady!" Josephine called, but the animals only grew more frantic, jerking against their harnesses and threatening to overturn the damaged wagon. Her heart raced with fear not for herself but for the terrified animals that could hurt themselves in their panic. Without thinking, Josephine did what had always calmed her in moments of distress. She began to sing. Her clear soprano voice rose above the storm, the melody of Beautiful Dreamer, flowing into the rain-soaked air. The horses' ears twitched, their movements becoming less erratic as her voice continued, strong and unwavering despite the rain that plastered her chestnut hair to her face and neck. Noah Vance pulled the brim of his hat lower, squinting through the sheets of rain as he guided his stallion along the muddy trail. At 30 years old, he'd seen plenty of storms sweep across these plains, but this one promised to be particularly nasty. He'd been heading back to his ranch after delivering cattle to the railroad when the skies opened. Now he was seeking shelter anywhere he could find it. The sound reached him faintly at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind's howl. But as he rode closer, he realized it was singing a woman's voice, pure and clear even through the storm's fury. Noah followed the sound, curiosity overcoming his urgency for shelter. When he crested the small rise in the trail, he saw her, a slender figure in a rain-soaked dress, standing before a team of horses, singing as if her life depended on it. The horses, which should have been wild with fear in such weather, stood attentively, their previous panic subsiding under the spell of her voice. Noah remained motionless atop his horse, transfixed. In that moment, watching this unknown woman singing to calm frightened horses in a raging storm, a certainty settled deep in his chest. "That's the woman I'll marry," he whispered to himself, the words emerging unbidden yet carrying the weight of absolute conviction. Shaking himself from his reverie, Noah urged his horse forward. As he approached, he could see that one of the wagon wheels had broken, leaving the young woman stranded. "Miss," he called out, raising his voice to be heard over the storm. "Do you need assistance?" Josephine turned, startled by the sudden appearance of a stranger. She stopped singing, causing the horses to shift nervously once more. "Please don't stop," Noah said quickly, dismounting. "Your singing is keeping them calm." Though bewildered, Josephine resumed her song, watching cautiously as the tall cowboy approached. His face was partially shadowed by his hat, but she could make out a strong jaw covered with several days' worth of stubble and eyes that seemed to assess everything in a single glance. Noah moved to examine the broken wheel, then checked the horses' harnesses before returning to stand near Josephine, respectfully keeping some distance. "Looks like you've got a shattered wheel and you're a fair piece from town," he observed when she finished her song. "Storm's not letting up anytime soon. My ranch is about 2 miles that way." He gestured eastward. "We could stable your horses there, and you'd have a dry place to wait out the storm." Josephine hesitated, weighing her limited options against accepting help from a stranger. "I'm supposed to be in Silver Creek tonight," I'm the new schoolteacher. Noah's eyes widened slightly. The schoolteacher? The town's been waiting for you. Name's Noah Vance. I own the Crooked River Ranch about halfway between here and Silver Creek. Josephine Taylor, she replied, relieved to hear he was a local rancher rather than some drifter. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Vance, but I couldn't possibly impose. Another lightning strike, closer this time, made the decision for them as the horses reared again in terror. Without hesitation, Josephine began another song, this time a gentle lullaby. Noah watched, amazed, as the animals settled once more. Miss Taylor, he said firmly when she paused, I don't mean to be forward, but you can't stay out here. We need to get these horses to shelter, and your wagon won't make it to town with that broken wheel. Recognizing the sense in his words, Josephine nodded reluctantly. What about my belongings? We can cover the wagon with your tarp, secure it as best we can. I'll send my ranch hands back for it tomorrow when the storm's passed. Working together in the pouring rain, they unhitched the team from the wagon. Noah helped Josephine onto his own horse before mounting behind her, taking the reins of her 4 horses as they set off toward his ranch. The ride was uncomfortable and wet, with Josephine acutely aware of the stranger's proximity. Yet there was something reassuring about his presence, a steadiness that matched the rhythm of his horse's gait. As they rode, Noah's mind raced. The new schoolteacher was not what he'd expected. The town council had mentioned hiring someone from back east, but they'd failed to mention her youth, her beauty, or her remarkable voice. Most of all, they hadn't mentioned the curious effect she'd had on him, that instant of recognition that had struck him like lightning when he saw her singing to those frightened animals. After nearly an hour of slow progress through the storm, the silhouette of Crooked River Ranch came into view. Several buildings formed a rough semicircle around a central yard, with the main house standing larger than the rest. Light glowed from its windows, a beacon in the stormy evening. As they approached, the front door of the house opened, and a woman in her 50s hurried onto the covered porch. Noah Vance, what in heaven's name are you doing out in this weather? She called. Her eyes widened when she noticed Josephine. And who's this you've brought with you? Mrs. Hollister, this is Miss Taylor, Silver Creek's new schoolteacher, Noah explained as they dismounted. Found her stranded with a broken wagon wheel. Miss Taylor, this is Mrs. Hollister, my housekeeper and the only reason this place doesn't fall to pieces. Goodness gracious, child, you're soaked through. Come inside before you catch your death, Mrs. Hollister urged, ushering Josephine toward the house. The horses, Josephine began, glancing back at the still nervous animals. I'll see to them, Noah assured her. Go get warm. As Mrs. Hollister led her inside, Josephine glanced back to see Noah already leading all 5 horses toward the stable. His tall figure steady despite the wind and rain battering against him. There was something undeniably compelling about the rancher, a quiet strength that had made her feel safe even in the midst of the storm. Inside the ranch house, Mrs. Hollister wasted no time getting Josephine out of her wet clothes and into a borrowed nightgown and robe, before settling her in a chair near the kitchen stove with a steaming cup of tea. That man has the most uncanny timing, Mrs. Hollister remarked as she hung Josephine's dress and undergarments near the stove to dry. Always showing up exactly when needed. How long were you out in that awful weather, dear? Not too long, Josephine answered, though her trembling hands suggested otherwise. The wheel broke perhaps an hour before Mr. Vance found me. Well, you're lucky he came along when he did. These spring storms can turn deadly, especially out on the open road. The older woman paused, studying Josephine's face. So you're our new schoolteacher? The whole town's been talking about your arrival. Before Josephine could respond, the front door opened and Noah entered, bringing a gust of cold air and the smell of rain with him. He'd removed his drenched coat and hat, revealing thick dark hair that curled slightly when wet. His shirt clung to broad shoulders, and Josephine found herself quickly averting her gaze. "Horses are settled," he announced, running a hand through his hair. "Your team is a bit shaken but no worse for wear. They responded remarkably well to your singing, Miss Taylor. Never seen anything like it." "My father raised horses," Josephine explained, warming her hands on the teacup. "When I was a child, he taught me that singing could calm them during storms. Said it was the steadiness of the human voice that reassured them." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "Your father was a wise man. Most folks around here just shout at their horses when they're spooked, which only frightens them more." Mrs. Hollister disappeared briefly, returning with dry clothes for Noah. "Change before you flood my kitchen," she ordered, then turned to Josephine. "I've prepared the guest room for you, Miss Taylor. It's not fancy, but it's clean and dry." "Thank you, Mrs. Hollister. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness, both of you," Josephine added, glancing at Noah. "No need for that," Noah replied. "Folks help each other out here. It's the way of things." He accepted the clothes from Mrs. Hollister and excused himself to change. Once he'd gone, the housekeeper's expression softened. "He may act like it's nothing special, but Noah Vance doesn't bring just anyone to this house. You must have made quite an impression." Josephine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He merely offered assistance to someone in distress. I'm sure he would have done the same for anyone." Mrs. Hollister smiled knowingly. "Perhaps, but I've known that boy since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you just now." Before Josephine could formulate a response, Noah returned, now dressed in dry clothes that emphasized his tall, lean frame. He took a seat at the kitchen table, accepting the coffee Mrs. Hollister poured for him. "The storm's not letting up," he observed. "You'll likely need to stay here tomorrow as well, Miss Taylor. The trails to town will be too muddy for safe travel." Josephine's brow furrowed with concern. "But I'm expected in Silver Creek. The town council already knows you're here." Noah finished. "While I was in the stable, I sent one of my ranch hands to ride to town. Dangerous business in this weather, but Tom's the best rider I've got. He'll let them know you're safe and will arrive when the weather clears." Relief washed over Josephine. "Thank you. I wouldn't want them thinking I'd failed to arrive or changed my mind." "They've waited this long for a teacher," Noah said with a small smile. "Another day or two won't matter." Over a simple but hearty supper of stew and fresh bread, Josephine learned more about her rescuer. Noah Vance had inherited Crooked River Ranch from his father 8 years prior, and had expanded it into one of the most successful cattle operations in the territory. Unlike many ranchers, he employed fair practices with both his workers and the nearby native tribes, earning him respect from all quarters. "The Blackfeet consider him a friend," Mrs. Hollister informed Josephine. "Which is saying something, considering the history between them and white settlers in these parts." Noah shifted uncomfortably under the praise. "I just treat people as they ought to be treated. Nothing remarkable about that." "It's more remarkable than you might think," Josephine replied softly. "Especially out here." Their eyes met briefly across the table, and something unspoken passed between them, a moment of understanding that left Josephine feeling strangely breathless. After dinner, despite Mrs. Hollister's protests that she should rest, Josephine insisted on helping with the dishes. As they worked side by side in the kitchen, Noah asked about her journey from Boston and her plans for the school. 20 children are enrolled so far," Josephine explained, carefully drying a plate. "Ages 6 to 16. I understand it's a rather primitive schoolhouse, but I've brought books and supplies to help establish a proper learning environment." "Primitive is generous," Noah remarked with a wry smile. "It's 4 walls and a roof, with benches the townsmen cobbled together. But the children are eager to learn, and the parents are committed to education. That's more than many frontier towns can claim." "And what about you, Mr. Vance? Do you have children who will be attending my school?" Noah shook his head. "No, madam. Never married. Oh. Josephine wasn't sure why this information caused a flutter in her stomach. I just assumed, with the size of your ranch, that I'd have a wife and a passel of young ones running around? He finished, amusement evident in his voice. Been too busy building this place to consider such things. Besides, most women aren't exactly keen on the idea of ranch life. It's not easy out here. Yet Mrs. Hollister seems to manage admirably, Josephine observed. Mrs. Hollister is one of a kind, Noah agreed. But she had her late husband by her side for 30 years before coming to work for my family. She knows what she signed up for. The conversation lulled, filled only by the sound of rain against the windows and the occasional rumble of distant thunder. When the kitchen was clean, Mrs. Hollister showed Josephine to the guest room, leaving her with a thick quilt and a lit oil lamp. Sleep well, dear, the housekeeper said. Tomorrow will look brighter, even if the rain continues. Left alone, Josephine sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the storm outside. The day's events replayed in her mind the broken wheel, the frightened horses, and the unexpected appearance of Noah Vance. There was something about him that intrigued her, beyond his timely rescue. A depth to his gaze, a thoughtfulness in his manner that set him apart from other men she'd known. She shook her head, dismissing such thoughts. She had come west to teach, to build a new life for herself far from the painful memories of Boston. Romance was not part of her plan, especially not with a rancher she'd just met. Yet as she drifted into sleep that night, it was Noah's face that lingered in her dreams, and the curious feeling that their meeting had somehow altered the course of her life. Morning brought no respite from the rain, though the violent thunderstorm had passed during the night. Noah was already gone when Josephine came downstairs, dressed once more in her own clothes, now dried and pressed thanks to Mrs. Hollister's care. He's checking the cattle, the housekeeper explained, setting a plate of eggs and bacon before Josephine. Storm like that can scatter the herds if they get spooked. He'll be back by midday. Josephine spent the morning helping Mrs. Hollister with household tasks, learning more about Silver Creek and its residents in the process. The town had grown rapidly in the past 5 years, from a mere trading post to a community of nearly 400 souls, complete with a general store, a saloon, a small hotel, and now a proper school. Noah donated the lumber for the schoolhouse, Mrs. Hollister mentioned as they kneaded bread dough side by side. He's always believed education is what will civilize this territory. That's rather progressive thinking for a cattleman, Josephine remarked. Noah's not your typical rancher. His mother taught him to read and write before he could properly ride a horse, and his father made sure he understood that brains were as important as brawn in building something that lasts. By midday, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and Noah returned, accompanied by 3 ranch hands who had helped round up stray cattle. The men ate lunch together in the kitchen, their good-natured banter making Josephine smile. She noticed that Noah treated his workers as equals rather than subordinates, listening to their opinions and sharing the latest news from town. After the meal, Noah approached Josephine as she helped clear the table. If you're feeling up to it, I'd like to show you something, he said. The rain's let up enough that we won't get soaked. Curious, Josephine accepted his offer. He provided her with a heavy coat to ward off the chill and led her outside. They walked past the stables toward a small rise beyond the main ranch buildings. Despite the mud, Noah was careful to guide her along the firmest ground, occasionally offering his arm for support. At the top of the rise stood a lone cottonwood tree, its new spring leaves glistening with raindrops. From this vantage point, Josephine could see the full expanse of Crooked River Ranch spread out before her rolling grasslands dotted with cattle, the twisting silver ribbon of the river that gave the ranch its name, and in the distance the blue-gray silhouette of mountains. It's beautiful, she breathed, taking in the vastness of the landscape. This is my thinking spot, Noah admitted, his voice softer than usual. When my father died, I used to come up here every day, trying to figure out how to run this place on my own. Now I come when I need to remember why all the hard work matters." Josephine glanced at him, struck by the openness in his expression. "And why does it matter, Mr. Vance?" "Because this land," he gestured toward the vista before them, "it gets in your blood, becomes part of who you are. I want to build something here that will last, something good and right." He paused, looking slightly embarrassed by his own earnestness. "Probably sounds foolish to someone from Boston." "Not at all," Josephine replied. "I think it's admirable to care so deeply for your home." Noah studied her face for a moment. "What about you, Miss Taylor? What brings a refined lady like yourself to a rough place like Montana Territory?" The question, though gently asked, touched on memories Josephine usually kept carefully contained. Yet something about Noah's straightforward manner made her want to answer honestly. "After my parents died influenza, within weeks of each other, there was nothing left for me in Boston. My father's business partner cheated me out of my inheritance, leaving me with little more than my personal possessions and enough money for passage west." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I saw the advertisement for a teacher in Silver Creek and decided that a fresh start, as far from Boston as possible, was exactly what I needed." Noah's expression darkened at the mention of her being cheated. "I'm sorry that happened to you. Some men have no honor." "It taught me to rely on myself," Josephine said, attempting a smile. "And it led me here, which seems a fair trade for the hardship." Their eyes met again, and this time Josephine didn't look away. There was something in Noah's gaze that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before, as if he recognized something in her that she barely acknowledged in herself. The moment stretched between them, broken only when a raindrop fell from the tree above, landing squarely on Noah's nose. They both laughed, the unexpected humor dissolving the tension. "We should head back," Noah suggested, offering his arm once more, "before the rain decides to return in earnest." As they walked back to the house, Josephine found herself wondering what it might be like to stay at Crooked River Ranch permanently, to wake each morning to this wild beauty and Noah's quiet strength. The thought startled her with its clarity and longing, and she quickly pushed it aside. She had a position waiting in Silver Creek, responsibilities to fulfill. Daydreaming about a man she barely knew would only lead to disappointment. By the following morning, the skies had cleared, and the April sun shone brightly, beginning the slow process of drying the muddy trails. Noah announced that they could likely make the journey to Silver Creek by afternoon if the weather held. "My men retrieved your wagon yesterday," he told Josephine over breakfast. "The wheel's been repaired, and your belongings appear undamaged, though some things might need drying out." "I can't thank you enough for all you've done," Josephine said earnestly. "You've shown me such kindness when I was a complete stranger." "Hardly a stranger now," Noah replied with a small smile. "Besides, I have business in town myself. Been putting off picking up supplies on account of spring calving, but now's as good a time as any." Mrs. Hollister insisted on packing a basket of food for Josephine's first few days in town. "The hotel meals are passable but nothing to write home about," she explained. "This will tide you over until you're settled." As Josephine prepared to depart, gathering her few personal items that had been brought from the wagon, she felt an unexpected reluctance to leave Crooked River Ranch. In just 2 days, the place had begun to feel familiar, almost welcoming. Mrs. Hollister's motherly presence and Noah's quiet companionship had eased the loneliness that had been her constant companion since leaving Boston. Noah helped her into the wagon, now hitched once more to her team of 4, who seemed happy to see her. The lead horse nickered softly when she approached, nuzzling her hand. "They remember you," Noah observed, "probably expecting a song." Josephine laughed, stroking the horse's nose. "Perhaps later, if there's another storm." Noah mounted his own horse, and together they set off for Silver Creek, traveling at a moderate pace to accommodate the still muddy trail. Along the way, he pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the area, the bluff where a famous standoff between cattle rustlers and local ranchers had occurred, the bend in the river that marked the unofficial boundary between ranch lands and the territory still frequented by Blackfeet hunting parties. "They're peaceful now," Noah assured her, noting her concerned expression. "Been 5 years since the last real trouble. Chief Running Elk and I worked out an understanding. His people stay north of the river during calving season, and I make sure my cattle don't destroy their traditional hunting grounds." "That's remarkably diplomatic," Josephine said. "From what I've read in Eastern newspapers, relations between settlers and natives are rarely so cordial." Noah's expression hardened. "Newspapers only tell one side of the story, usually the side that sells more papers. The Blackfeet were here first. Their claim to the land is as legitimate as mine, more so, if we're being honest. Finding a way to coexist seems the only decent approach." His words impressed Josephine, revealing a depth of thoughtfulness she seldom encountered even among educated men in Boston. Noah Vance might lack formal schooling, but he possessed a natural wisdom and sense of justice that transcended book learning. As they drew nearer to Silver Creek, Josephine's anxiety grew. Would the town live up to her expectations? Would she be able to establish a proper school in such a frontier setting? And most pressingly, would she ever see Noah Vance again after today? The latter question bothered her more than she cared to admit. In just 2 days, this quiet rancher had awakened feelings she thought long buried after a failed courtship in Boston, a painful episode that had left her wary of men's intentions. "There it is," Noah announced, interrupting her thoughts. Silver Creek. The town appeared before them, nestled in a small valley with the eponymous creek winding along its western edge. Despite its frontier location, Silver Creek had a surprisingly orderly appearance, with a main street of wooden buildings, many sporting fresh paint, and side streets lined with modest homes. A small church steeple rose above the other structures, its white paint gleaming in the afternoon sun. "It's larger than I expected," Josephine remarked, pleasantly surprised. "Grown considerably in the past few years," Noah agreed. "The railroad spur line that came through last year brought new folks and new money. Town council's been working hard to make this a respectable place, not just another rough settlement." As they traveled down the main street, people stopped to watch their progress, many calling out greetings to Noah. He responded with friendly nods, occasionally introducing Josephine as the new schoolteacher. The townspeople's warm welcomes helped ease her nervousness. Their destination was the Silver Creek Hotel, a 2-story building near the center of town. Noah explained that she would stay there until more permanent arrangements could be made. The town council had planned to build a teacher's residence next to the school, but construction was delayed by the winter weather, he told her as they pulled up in front of the hotel. "Should be ready by midsummer." Before Josephine could respond, a portly man in a well-tailored suit hurried out of the hotel to greet them. "Miss Taylor, we were beginning to worry when you didn't arrive as scheduled," he exclaimed, helping her down from the wagon. "I'm Mayor Harrington. When Noah's ranch hand brought word that you were weathering the storm at Crooked River, the entire council breathed a sigh of relief." "I'm grateful for Mr. Vance's assistance," Josephine replied, smiling up at Noah, who remained mounted on his horse. "He's been exceedingly kind." "That's Noah for you," the mayor said heartily, "always coming to the rescue." He turned to address the rancher. "The council meets tomorrow evening. We'd value your input on that water rights matter we discussed last month." Noah nodded. "I'll be there." His eyes returned to Josephine. "Miss Taylor, it's been a pleasure. I trust you'll find Silver Creek to your liking." There was a formality to his words that hadn't been present during their journey, and Josephine felt a pang of disappointment at this sudden shift. "Thank you again, Mr. Vance," she said, hoping her voice didn't reveal her confusion. "For everything." Noah tipped his hat, then turned his horse toward the general store further down the street. Josephine watched him go, wondering if their paths would cross again, or if their brief connection had been merely a product of unusual circumstances. Mayor Harrington didn't give her much time to dwell on such thoughts. He ushered her into the hotel, introducing her to the proprietor, Mrs. Bennet, a widow who ran the establishment with remarkable efficiency. "We've prepared our finest room for you," Mrs. Bennet assured her, leading the way upstairs. "And your trunk arrived by stagecoach last week, as you arranged. I've had it brought up already." The room was small but clean, with a comfortable-looking bed, a washstand, a small writing desk, and a window overlooking the main street. It would serve adequately until her permanent residence was ready. After freshening up, Josephine was escorted by the mayor to the schoolhouse at the edge of town. The building was indeed primitive, a simple wooden structure with large windows to allow natural light and rows of rough-hewn benches facing a teacher's desk at the front. A blackboard hung on the wall behind the desk, and a small wood stove stood in the corner. "It's not much compared to what you're used to in Boston," Mayor Harrington said apologetically, "but it's sturdy and watertight. The children will arrive Monday morning, eager to begin their lessons. It will serve very well," Josephine assured him, already mentally arranging her books and teaching materials. "I've brought maps and a small library to supplement our resources." The mayor beamed with pride. "Silver Creek may be young, but we're determined to build something lasting here. Education is the cornerstone of civilization, as I always say." Over the next few days, Josephine busied herself with preparing the schoolhouse and meeting the families of her future students. The townspeople welcomed her warmly, inviting her to supper and introducing her to local customs. She learned about the town's history, its aspirations for growth, and the challenges of frontier life. Yet amid this flurry of activity, her thoughts often strayed to Crooked River Ranch and its owner. Noah hadn't returned to town since delivering her to the hotel, and she found herself scanning the street for his tall figure whenever she ventured out. On Sunday morning, Josephine attended services at Silver Creek's modest church. The congregation filled the small building to capacity, with families dressed in their finest clothes and children squirming in the hard pews. Reverend Mills delivered a sermon on community and mutual support, values that seemed to resonate deeply with the frontier congregation. As the service concluded and people began filing out into the spring sunshine, Josephine spotted Noah standing near the church steps, engaged in conversation with several ranchers. He was dressed more formally than she had seen him before, in a clean white shirt and dark jacket that emphasized his broad shoulders. When he turned and saw her, a smile spread across his face, causing an unexpected flutter in her chest. "Miss Taylor," he greeted her, excusing himself from the other men to approach her. "How are you finding Silver Creek?" "Quite welcoming," she replied, conscious of the curious glances from nearby townspeople. "Everyone has been very kind." "Glad to hear it." Noah hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "I understand your school opens tomorrow." "Yes, 22 students now, according to the latest count," Josephine confirmed. "I've spent the week preparing lessons and organizing the schoolhouse. 22 is a good start." Noah glanced around at the dispersing congregation, then lowered his voice slightly. "I wonder if you might permit me to call on you this evening? There's a matter I'd like to discuss regarding the school." Josephine's curiosity was piqued. "Of course. I'll be at the hotel after 4 o'clock. Noah nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his intentions. "Until then, Miss Taylor." The remainder of the day passed slowly for Josephine, her mind spinning with possibilities about Noah's visit. What school matter could be so important that he needed to discuss it privately? Perhaps he was simply being polite, checking on her welfare as an extension of his earlier assistance. At precisely 4:30, Noah arrived at the hotel, now dressed in his everyday attire of sturdy trousers, cotton shirt, and leather vest. Mrs. Bennet showed him to the small sitting room where Josephine waited, then discreetly withdrew, though not without a knowing smile that suggested she found the situation interesting. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Noah began, remaining standing until Josephine gestured for him to sit in the armchair opposite her. "You mentioned something about the school?" she prompted when he didn't immediately continue. Noah nodded, his hat resting on his knee. Yes, I've been thinking about your piano. My piano? Josephine repeated, surprised. It's still in your wagon at my ranch, he explained. I didn't bring it with your other belongings because it requires careful handling, especially after being exposed to the rain. But I've had my carpenter look it over, and he believes it's undamaged. That's a relief, Josephine said. But what does this have to do with the school? Noah leaned forward slightly. I'd like to donate it to the school, that is, if you're agreeable. Music education seems a valuable addition to what you're offering the children here. Josephine was momentarily speechless. The piano had been her most treasured possession, a final gift from her father. Yet the idea of sharing it with her students, of bringing music into their lives, held undeniable appeal. That's very generous, she finally managed. But the piano is quite valuable. I couldn't accept such a donation without compensating you in some way. Noah shook his head firmly. It's already yours. I'm merely suggesting a location for it. The schoolhouse would benefit from having a piano, and I suspect you'd enjoy teaching the children music as well as letters. His thoughtfulness touched her deeply. You remembered that I sang to calm the horses. I'm not likely to forget it, Noah replied softly, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. It was remarkable. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken words. Josephine found herself wanting to ask what else he remembered about that stormy night, what else he might have thought about her singing in the rain. Instead, she said, I would be honored to have the piano in the schoolhouse. The children would benefit enormously from exposure to music. Noah's expression brightened. Excellent. I'll have it delivered tomorrow while school is in session. A surprise for the children. They'll be thrilled, Josephine assured him, wondering if he realized how much his gesture meant to her personally. The piano represented her last connection to her former life, yet placing it in the schoolhouse felt right, a bridge between her past and her future in Silver Creek. As Noah prepared to leave, he hesitated at the sitting room door. There's one more thing, Miss Taylor. Yes. The Spring Festival is this Saturday. It's a tradition in Silver Creek: food, music, dancing. I wondered if you might consider attending. With me. The invitation caught Josephine by surprise. Was Noah Vance courting her? The thought sent a rush of warmth through her body, followed immediately by caution. She barely knew him, and her experience with men had taught her to be wary of hasty emotional entanglements. Yet there was something so genuine in his manner, so unlike the calculated charm of her former suitor in Boston, that she found herself nodding before she could overthink the decision. I'd like that very much, Mr. Vance. A smile spread across his face, transforming his usually serious expression. Noah, please. If we're to attend the festival together, I think we can dispense with formalities. Then you must call me Josephine, she replied, returning his smile. Josephine, he repeated, as if testing the name. I'll collect you at noon on Saturday. After he left, Josephine remained in the sitting room, contemplating this unexpected turn of events. Noah Vance was unlike any man she had known, straightforward yet thoughtful, strong yet gentle. His interest in her seemed genuine, but she reminded herself to proceed with caution. Her purpose in coming to Silver Creek was to teach, to build a new life independent of anyone else's support or protection. Yet as she prepared for her first day of teaching, laying out books and writing her name on the blackboard, she couldn't help but look forward to Saturday with an anticipation that had nothing to do with her professional ambitions. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect day for the opening of Silver Creek School. Josephine arrived early, arranging the classroom and reviewing her lessons one final time. At precisely 8 o'clock, the children began arriving, a diverse group ranging from 6-year-old twins with matching braids to teenage boys who towered over their younger classmates. The day proceeded smoothly, with Josephine assessing the children's varying levels of education and establishing classroom rules. Some had received informal schooling from parents or older siblings, while others had never held a pencil before. All seemed eager to learn, if somewhat restless after a winter of relative freedom. Shortly after noon, as the children ate their packed lunches in the schoolyard, Josephine heard the sound of wagons approaching. She stepped outside to find Noah directing 4 men who were carefully unloading her piano from a flatbed wagon. "Right on time," he called to her with a grin. "Where would you like it placed?" The children gathered around, watching wide-eyed as the men maneuvered the instrument into the schoolhouse. Josephine directed them to position it against the wall near her desk, where it wouldn't obstruct the children's view of the blackboard, but would be accessible for lessons. Once the piano was securely in place, Noah dismissed his men, who returned to their wagon but remained nearby, clearly curious about what would happen next. "Would you play something for us, Miss Taylor?" asked Sarah Jenkins, a bright-eyed 10-year-old who had already demonstrated a love of learning. Josephine glanced at Noah, who nodded encouragingly. "I think that's an excellent idea. The children should hear what they'll be learning." With a smile, Josephine sat at the piano bench, running her fingers lightly over the keys to ensure they were still in tune after their journey. Finding the instrument in perfect condition, she began to play a lively folk tune that her father had taught her years ago. The children gathered closer, their faces alight with wonder at the music filling their humble schoolhouse. Even the older boys, who had affected disinterest in much of the morning's lessons, drew near, captivated by the unfamiliar sound. When she finished, the children erupted in applause, begging for more. Josephine obliged with a simpler tune, encouraging them to clap along with the rhythm. Soon the entire schoolhouse was filled with music and laughter, the children's natural inhibitions melting away in the joy of the moment. Noah watched from the doorway, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. When Josephine's eyes met his over the heads of the children, a silent understanding passed between them. This was why they were both here, in this frontier town far from civilization's comforts. To build something meaningful, to bring light and knowledge and beauty to this wild place. As the impromptu music lesson concluded and the children reluctantly returned to their studies, Noah approached the piano. "Seems I was right about the value of music education," he observed softly. "I've never seen Jacob Turner pay attention to anything for that long, and he's the most restless boy in the county." Josephine laughed. "Music has a way of reaching even the most reluctant students. Thank you for making this possible." "Just doing my part for Silver Creek's future," Noah replied, though his eyes suggested his motivation might be more personal than civic-minded. "I should let you get back to your teaching. Saturday at noon." "I'll be ready," Josephine confirmed. After Noah and his men departed, Josephine found it challenging to recapture the children's attention for arithmetic lessons. Their minds were filled with music and the excitement of having a real piano in their schoolhouse. Finally, she promised that each day would now include a short music lesson if they applied themselves diligently to their other subjects. This compromise proved effective, and by dismissal time, Josephine felt confident that her first day had been a success. As the children scattered to their homes, several parents arrived to meet the new teacher and express their gratitude for her willingness to come to Silver Creek. "It's about time these young ones had proper schooling," declared Mrs. Turner, mother of restless Jacob and 3 other children. "And music, too. Why, that's more than I dared hope for when the council said they'd hired an Eastern lady." "The piano was Mr. Vance's idea," Josephine explained. "He very generously arranged to have it brought to the schoolhouse." Mrs. Turner exchanged knowing glances with another mother. "Did he now? Well, that's interesting. Noah Vance isn't usually one for getting involved in town matters unless it's about cattle or water rights." "He seems quite committed to education," Josephine replied, uncomfortable with the women's obvious insinuations. "Oh, I'm sure it's education he's committed to," Mrs. Turner said with a barely suppressed smile. "Nothing at all to do with our lovely new schoolteacher." Josephine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Vance has been very helpful since my arrival," Nothing more. Of course, dear, the older woman soothed, though her expression remained knowing. We're just pleased to see Noah taking an interest in community affairs. The conversation left Josephine feeling unsettled. Were her interactions with Noah already the subject of town gossip? The thought was both embarrassing and concerning. As a teacher, she needed to maintain a respectable reputation, free from romantic entanglements that might distract from her duties. Yet even as she reminded herself of this professional obligation, she couldn't deny the anticipation she felt about Saturday's festival. There was something about Noah Vance that drew her to him despite her reservations of steadiness, an integrity that made her want to know him better. The week passed quickly, filled with teaching duties and preparations for the spring festival. By Friday afternoon, Josephine had established a routine with her students, dividing them into groups based on ability rather than age and incorporating short music lessons as promised. The children were responding well to her methods, even the older boys who had initially seemed resistant to female authority. Saturday dawned warm and clear, perfect weather for an outdoor celebration. Josephine dressed with particular care in her best dress, a sky blue gown with delicate embroidery that she had saved for special occasions. Mrs. Bennett helped her arrange her hair, weaving blue ribbons through the chestnut waves. "You look lovely, dear," the hotel proprietress declared. "Every eligible bachelor in the county will be vying for your attention today." Josephine smiled politely, though in truth there was only one man whose attention she sought. When Noah arrived precisely at noon, she was waiting in the hotel lobby, her heart beating a little faster at the sight of him standing in the doorway. He had dressed for the occasion as well, wearing a crisp white shirt, dark vest, and trousers that had clearly been pressed. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he'd trimmed his stubble to a more manageable length. He looked handsome and somewhat nervous, turning his hat in his hands as he waited for her. When he saw her, his expression transformed, admiration evident in his eyes. "Josephine, you look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, feeling suddenly shy under his appreciative gaze. "You look quite handsome yourself." Noah offered his arm, and together they walked toward the town square where the festival was being held. The normally quiet street was transformed with colorful bunting, tables laden with food, and a wooden platform where musicians were setting up for dancing later in the day. Spring Festival began as a celebration of winter's end, Noah explained as they strolled through the growing crowd. Now it's become Silver Creek's biggest social event. People come from miles around to trade goods, arrange marriages, settle disputes, and generally reconnect after the isolation of winter. "It's wonderful," Josephine said sincerely, delighted by the festive atmosphere. Children ran laughing between booths where vendors sold handcrafted items and sweet treats. Women displayed quilts and preserves for judging, while men gathered in small groups, discussing cattle prices and weather predictions. Several of Josephine's students spotted her, rushing over to greet their teacher and stare curiously at Noah. She introduced him as the man who had donated the piano, earning him immediate admiration from the music-loving children. "Will you sing for us today, Miss Taylor?" asked little Emma Parker, the youngest of Josephine's students. Before she could respond, Noah answered for her. "Miss Taylor will definitely be singing later. In fact, I've arranged a special surprise that will showcase her talent." Josephine looked at him questioningly, but he merely smiled, steering her toward the food tables where a community feast was being laid out. The afternoon passed pleasantly as Noah introduced Josephine to numerous residents from outlying farms and ranches. She was struck by the respect everyone showed him, not deference born of fear, but genuine regard for his judgment and character. Even the town's more rough-hewn elements, like the saloon owner and his employees, treated Noah with consideration that seemed at odds with their otherwise brash demeanor. As the sun began to lower in the western sky, the musicians took their places on the platform. The fiddle player stepped forward, calling for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, as is tradition, we'll begin the dancing with a special performance. This year, We're honored to have Miss Josephine Taylor, our new schoolteacher, favor us with a song. Josephine turned to Noah in surprise. This is your surprise? You volunteered me to sing? After hearing you calm those horses in the storm, I thought everyone should experience your gift, he replied, looking slightly abashed. But only if you're willing. She should have been annoyed at his presumption. But his evident admiration and the expectant faces of her students in the crowd made refusal impossible. Very well, she agreed. But you'll owe me a dance afterward. Noah's face lit with a smile. Gladly. The crowd parted as Josephine made her way to the platform. The fiddle player asked what she would sing, and after a moment's consideration, she chose Barbara Allen, a ballad her mother had taught her years ago. Standing before the gathered townspeople, Josephine took a deep breath and began to sing. Her clear soprano voice carried across the square, the mournful tune silencing even the most restless children. She sang of love and loss, of regret and remembrance, infusing the ancient ballad with genuine emotion. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of absolute silence before the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Josephine curtsied, her eyes seeking Noah in the audience. He stood apart from the others, his expression one of such undisguised admiration that it made her heart skip. The fiddler struck up a lively tune for dancing, and Noah was immediately at her side, claiming the dance she had promised. Though not particularly graceful, he moved with the same quiet confidence he brought to everything, guiding her through the steps of a country reel with surprising skill. Where did you learn to dance? Josephine asked as they circled each other. My mother insisted, Noah replied, his hand warm against hers as they turned. Said no son of hers would grow up to be a clumsy ox at social gatherings. Josephine laughed, enjoying the unexpected image of a young Noah being taught dancing by a determined mother. She was wise. Many men consider dancing beneath them. My mother never allowed me to consider anything worthwhile as beneath me, Noah said, his expression softening at the memory. She believed in living fully, appreciating beauty wherever it could be found. As the evening progressed, they danced several more times, interspersed with conversations with various townspeople and sampling the abundant food. Josephine found herself relaxing completely in Noah's company, charmed by his dry humor and thoughtful observations. When the dancing ended and families began gathering their sleepy children for the journey home, Noah suggested a walk along the creek before returning to the hotel. It's a perfect evening, he observed, offering his arm once more. And I'm not quite ready to say good night. Josephine accepted, feeling the same reluctance to end their time together. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following a well-worn path that paralleled the creek's meandering course. The moon cast silver light on the flowing water, and spring peepers created a gentle chorus from the reeds. Thank you for today, Josephine said finally. I've enjoyed myself more than I have in a very long time. Noah glanced down at her, his expression serious in the moonlight. Josephine, there's something I should tell you. Her heart quickened at his tone. Yes. He stopped walking, turning to face her directly. The night we met, when I found you singing to those frightened horses in the middle of that storm. Something happened to me. Josephine waited, hardly daring to breathe as he continued. I saw you there, soaked through but still singing, still trying to calm those animals when most people would have given up and run for shelter. And I knew, he paused, seeming to search for the right words. I knew that you were someone special, someone I wanted in my life. The sincerity in his voice moved her deeply. Noah. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. We've only known each other a short time, and you've just started building your life here. But I wanted you to know that my interest isn't casual or passing. When I'm ready to court a woman properly, it will be you if you're willing. Josephine was touched by his honesty and restraint. Most men she had known would have pressed their advantage after such a pleasant day together, perhaps tried to steal a kiss in the moonlight. But Noah was offering something more valuable: respect for her position and her independence, coupled with a clear statement of his intentions. "I appreciate your candor," she replied softly, "and I would be lying if I said I wasn't drawn to you as well. But you're right, I've only just begun my work here. I need time to establish myself as a teacher before considering other possibilities." Noah nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then we understand each other. For now, I'd be honored to call you a friend, Miss Josephine Taylor." "I'd like that very much, Mr. Noah Vance," she returned, matching his formal tone with a teasing smile. They resumed their walk, the air between them charged with unspoken possibility. When they reached the hotel, Noah escorted her to the entrance but didn't attempt to follow her inside. "Good night, Josephine," he said, tipping his hat. "I hope you'll allow me to call on you again soon." "I'd be disappointed if you didn't," she replied honestly. As she prepared for bed that night, Josephine reflected on the remarkable turn her life had taken since arriving in Montana Territory. She had come seeking independence and a fresh start, determined to rely on no one but herself after the betrayals she had suffered in Boston. Yet here she was, barely 2 weeks into her new life, contemplating the possibility of a relationship with a man she barely knew. Was she being foolish, allowing herself to be charmed by the first kind man she encountered in this wilderness? No, she decided as she extinguished her lamp. Noah Vance was not simply kind. He was exceptional, a man of integrity, intelligence, and unexpected depth. If she were to consider any man as a potential partner, she could do far worse than the rancher who had rescued her from a storm and recognized the value of music in a frontier schoolhouse. The realization brought a smile to her lips as she drifted into sleep, dreams filled with dancing and moonlit walks beside a silver creek. Spring blossomed into early summer, bringing longer days and the vibrant green of renewed life to the Montana landscape. Josephine settled into her role as Silver Creek's teacher, expanding her curriculum to include not only reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also history, basic sciences, and, of course, music. The children thrived under her guidance, even those who had initially seemed resistant to education. Noah called on her regularly, usually on Sunday afternoons when propriety allowed him to escort her on walks or picnics without raising too many eyebrows. Their friendship deepened with each meeting, conversations ranging from books they had both read to their hopes for the territory's future. Josephine learned about Noah's struggles to maintain his ranch after his father's death, his mother's influence on his character, and his determination to build something lasting in this wild country. In turn, she shared more about her life in Boston, her parents' loving marriage, her father's success as a merchant importer, and the painful betrayal by his partner that had left her nearly destitute after their deaths. "He offered marriage as a solution to my financial troubles," Josephine explained during one Sunday walk along the creek. "Said it was the only way to keep my father's business intact. But when I refused, something about him always seemed insincere. He revealed his true character. Within weeks, he had manipulated records and convinced creditors that my father had left significant debts. By the time I understood what was happening, there was nothing left but the house and a small amount of money my mother had kept separate from the business." Noah's expression darkened with anger on her behalf. "This man, he faced no consequences?" Josephine shook her head. "He was respected in Boston society, and I was a young woman alone. Who would believe my accusations against his word? Besides, he was careful to ensure everything appeared legal on paper." "So you sold the house and came west," Noah concluded. "Yes, the advertisement for a teacher in Silver Creek seemed providential. A fresh start, far from painful memories, doing work I was qualified for and believed in." Noah was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you, but I can't help being selfishly grateful that it brought you here." His candor warmed her heart. Over these weeks of careful courtship, for that was what it had become, though neither had officially named it as such, Josephine had come to treasure Noah's straightforward nature. There were no games with him, no hidden agendas or manipulations. As summer progressed, Josephine's teaching duties eased somewhat with the advent of haying season, when many of her older students were needed to help with the harvest. She used the reduced schedule to plan improvements for the fall term and assist with the construction of her small residence next to the schoolhouse. Noah visited the building site often, offering suggestions to the carpenters and personally overseeing the installation of shelves for Josephine's books. His attention to detail touched her deeply, especially when she discovered he had arranged for a small garden to be planted behind the house. "Thought you might enjoy growing some flowers," he explained when she expressed her surprise. "The soil's good here, and Mrs. Hollister mentioned you admired her roses at the ranch." It was these thoughtful gestures, more than grand declarations or expensive gifts, that gradually wore down Josephine's carefully constructed defenses. By midsummer, she found herself looking forward to Noah's visits with increasing anticipation, her heart lifting at the sight of his tall figure approaching the hotel or schoolhouse. The townsfolk noticed the developing relationship, of course. Silver Creek might be growing, but it was still small enough that little escaped public notice. Mrs. Bennett and Mrs. Turner exchanged knowing glances whenever Noah called for Josephine, and several mothers made pointed remarks about what a fine match they would make. For his part, Noah seemed unconcerned by the gossip, though he was careful to conduct their courtship with proper respect for Josephine's position. Their walks were always in public areas, their conversations held where others could see, if not hear them. He never presumed liberties that might compromise her reputation as the town's teacher. In late July, with the worst heat of summer upon them, Noah invited Josephine to a gathering at Crooked River Ranch. Several neighboring ranchers and their families would be attending a barbecue to celebrate the successful hay harvest. "It would be entirely proper," he assured her when she hesitated. "Mrs. Hollister will be there as hostess, and the Turners have already accepted my invitation. Their children can vouch for your continued respectability on Monday." Josephine laughed at his teasing tone. "Very well, though I'm more concerned about the heat than my reputation. These eastern clothes aren't well suited to Montana summers. Speaking of which," Noah said, reaching into his pocket, "I have something for you." He withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Josephine accepted it curiously, untying the string to reveal a delicate silk fan painted with wildflowers. "Noah, it's beautiful," she breathed, opening the fan to admire the artistry. "Where did you find such a thing in Silver Creek?" "Ordered it from Denver," he admitted. "Thought it might help with the heat, and it reminded me of you, practical but beautiful." The compliment brought color to her cheeks as she tested the fan, grateful for the immediate relief it provided. "Thank you. It's a perfect gift." The gathering at Crooked River Ranch proved to be more enjoyable than Josephine had anticipated. Mrs. Hollister welcomed her warmly, as did many of the ranch hands who remembered her from her brief stay during the spring storm. The other ranchers and their families were equally hospitable, though Josephine noted with amusement that several unmarried daughters regarded her with barely concealed assessment. "You've caused quite a stir, Mrs. Hollister informed her as they prepared platters of food in the kitchen. "Noah's considered quite a catch, you know. The most prosperous rancher in the county, and still unmarried at 30. Some of these girls have had their caps set for him for years." Josephine felt a twinge of discomfort. "We're merely friends. He's been kind enough to help me adjust to life here." Mrs. Hollister raised an eyebrow. "Is that what they're calling it these days? Well, friendship or not, I haven't seen that boy smile so much since his mother was alive. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." The older woman's approval was oddly reassuring. If Noah's trusted housekeeper who had known him since childhood saw their relationship as positive, perhaps Josephine was right to allow her feelings to develop despite her initial reservations. As evening approached and the worst heat of the day subsided, the gathering moved to the grassy area near the river. Lanterns were hung from tree branches, creating pools of golden light as darkness fell. Someone produced a fiddle, and impromptu dancing began on the flattened grass. Noah found Josephine watching the dancers, her new fan fluttering gently in the evening breeze. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. She accepted with a smile, allowing him to lead her into the simple country dance. Unlike the more formal atmosphere of the spring festival, this gathering had a relaxed, familial quality that encouraged conversation as they moved through the steps. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Noah asked, his hand warm against hers as they turned. "Very much," Josephine replied truthfully. "Your neighbors are lovely people." "They're curious about you," he admitted with a slight smile. The Eastern schoolteacher who's captured Noah Vance's attention. Some of them rode 20 miles just to see if the rumors were true. Josephine missed a step in surprise. "What rumors?" Noah guided her back into the rhythm of the dance. "That I've been seen walking out with the prettiest woman in 3 counties, and smiling more than anyone thought possible." His frank admission left Josephine momentarily speechless. They had been careful not to define their relationship too explicitly, both aware of the constraints her position placed upon them and the relatively short time they had known each other. "Noah," she began, uncertain how to respond to this new openness. "Don't worry," he said gently. "I'm not expecting anything you're not ready to give. I just wanted you to understand why everyone's watching us so closely. It's not often I show interest in any woman, let alone court one properly." Court. The word hung between them, finally giving name to what had been developing over these summer months. Josephine felt a rush of warmth that had nothing to do with the July evening. "Is that what you're doing? Courting me properly?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. Noah's eyes held hers, serious despite the playful music surrounding them. "I believe I am, Miss Taylor. With your permission, of course." The dance ended before she could respond, other couples breaking apart to applaud the musicians. Noah led Josephine away from the impromptu dance floor, toward the cottonwood tree where they had stood together months ago, looking out over the ranch. In the silver moonlight, with the sounds of music and laughter floating from the gathering, he turned to face her directly. "Josephine, I've respected your need to establish yourself here before considering a serious attachment. But my feelings haven't changed since the night we met, if anything. They've only grown stronger as I've come to know you better." He took her hand gently in his. "I find myself thinking of you throughout my days, wondering what you'd say about a new calf, or how you'd appreciate the wildflowers blooming on the North Ridge. I want to share those things with you, not just on Sunday afternoons, but every day." Josephine's heart raced at his words, so simple yet profound in their honesty. "Noah, you don't need to answer now," he interrupted, seeming suddenly nervous. "I know you value your independence, and I would never ask you to compromise the work you came here to do. I just wanted you to know where I stand, and that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here." Josephine looked up at this man who had become so dear to her in such a short time. The moonlight silvered his features, highlighting the earnestness in his expression and the hint of vulnerability in his eyes. In that moment, her carefully constructed walls built from past hurt and determination to stand alone seemed flimsy and unnecessary. "I think," she said slowly, finding her voice, "that I would like very much to be courted by you, Noah Vance, properly or otherwise." The smile that spread across his face was worth any risk her heart might be taking. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles in a gesture that was both respectful and deeply intimate. "You've made me a very happy man, Josephine Taylor." They returned to the gathering hand in hand, both aware that this small gesture would confirm every rumor circulating among the assembled ranchers and their families. Yet neither felt inclined to hide what was now acknowledged between them. As the evening drew to a close and guests began departing, Noah arranged for Mrs. Turner and her family to escort Josephine back to town in their wagon. Before she left, he drew her aside for a private moment. "I'll be in Silver Creek on Tuesday," he told her. "There's a town council meeting about expanding the school for fall term. Would you allow me to call on you afterward? I'd be disappointed if you didn't, Josephine replied, echoing her words from months ago with a smile. The ride back to town with the Turners was filled with gentle teasing about her understanding with Noah, which Josephine neither confirmed nor denied, though her smile spoke volumes. Mrs. Turner, for all her gossipy tendencies, seemed genuinely pleased by the development. Noah Vance is the finest man in the territory, she declared as they approached Silver Creek. Has been since his father passed. God rest his soul. Never seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you, Miss Taylor. He's been very kind, Josephine replied diplomatically. Mrs. Turner chuckled. Kindness has nothing to do with it, dear. That man is smitten, plain and simple. And if I'm not mistaken, our refined schoolteacher might be feeling similar sentiments. Josephine couldn't deny the truth of the woman's observation. Over the past months, Noah had become essential to her happiness in a way she had never anticipated when she arrived in Silver Creek. His steady presence, his unwavering support of her work, and his gentle courtship had won her heart despite her initial determination to remain independent. Tuesday's town council meeting confirmed what many had suspected. With increasing enrollment expected for the fall term, the schoolhouse would need to be expanded. Noah, as one of the wealthiest property owners, pledged lumber from his land and the assistance of his ranch hands during the quieter period before fall roundup. After the meeting, he called on Josephine as promised, bringing news of the council's decisions and a small bouquet of wildflowers he had gathered on his ride to town. The expansion will be completed before school resumes in September, he assured her as they sat in the hotel's small parlor under Mrs. Bennett's discreet supervision. And we've approved your request for additional books and maps. That's wonderful news, Josephine said, genuinely pleased. The children are making such progress, but we've been limited by our resources. Speaking of resources, Noah began, his expression turning serious. I have a proposition for you. Josephine raised an eyebrow, curious. Oh, the ranch has been prospering, and I've been considering ways to give back to the community beyond the usual donations. I'd like to establish a scholarship fund for promising students, those who might benefit from further education beyond what Silver Creek can offer. The idea immediately captured Josephine's imagination. Noah, that's a marvelous thought. So many of these children have potential that will never be realized without access to higher education. Exactly, he agreed, clearly pleased by her enthusiasm. I thought perhaps you could help me establish the criteria and administer the selection process, given your understanding of the students' abilities. I'd be honored, Josephine replied, touched by his thoughtfulness not only toward her but toward the community's future. This was the Noah she had come to admire, always looking beyond immediate concerns to the long-term welfare of the place and people he loved. As summer waned and preparations for fall term intensified, Josephine moved into her newly completed residence beside the schoolhouse. The small cabin was simply furnished but comfortable, with shelves for her books and a sunny window that overlooked her modest garden. Most precious of all was the privacy it afforded after months of hotel living. Noah visited often, sometimes bringing small gifts, a jar of Mrs. Hollister's preserves, a book he thought she might enjoy, or flowers from his mother's garden at the ranch. Their courtship progressed steadily, with mutual respect and deepening affection evident in every interaction. The expanded schoolhouse opened in September to an enrollment of 30 students, necessitating a more structured approach to Josephine's teaching methods. Noah's scholarship proposal was formally announced at the opening ceremony, generating excitement among parents and children alike. The first award would be made the following spring to a deserving student who wished to continue education at the academy in Helena. As fall colors painted the landscape in golds and reds, Noah invited Josephine to accompany him to the Harvest Dance, an event second only to the Spring Festival in Silver Creek's social calendar. There's something I'd like to discuss with you that evening, he said cryptically when she accepted. Something important. Josephine suspected she knew what Noah wished to discuss, and her heart fluttered with a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy at the prospect. Over the past months, their relationship had deepened into something neither could deny was heading toward permanence. The question was no longer if but when. The evening of the harvest dance arrived with perfect autumn weather, cool enough for shawls but clear and calm, with a full moon rising over the eastern hills. Josephine wore her best dress, a deep burgundy that complemented the season, with her mother's pearl earrings as her only adornment. Noah arrived promptly, looking handsome in a new jacket and polished boots. His eyes widened appreciatively when Josephine opened the door of her small home. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. The town hall was decorated with autumn bounty sheaves of wheat, baskets of apples, and pumpkins carved with glowing faces that delighted the children. Candles and oil lamps created a warm, golden atmosphere as couples danced to the music of a small but talented band. Noah and Josephine joined the dancing, their movements now familiar and comfortable after months of similar gatherings. They conversed with friends and neighbors, accepted congratulations on the successful school expansion, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being together among a community that had come to accept their courtship as natural and right. As the evening progressed, Noah grew quieter, occasionally checking his pocket watch as if waiting for something. Finally, as the musicians announced a short intermission, he took Josephine's hand. "Would you walk with me?" he asked, gesturing toward the door. "It's a beautiful night." Outside, the moon illuminated the town square with silver light, and the stars scattered across the dark sky seemed close enough to touch. Noah led Josephine to a bench beneath an old oak tree, its leaves rustling gently in the night breeze. "Do you remember the night we met?" he asked, his voice low and intimate in the darkness. Josephine smiled at the memory. "Of course. The storm, the broken will not my finest moment. It was the most important moment of my life," Noah said seriously, turning to face her. "Watching you sing to those frightened horses, seeing your courage and gentleness even in the midst of danger. I knew then what I know with absolute certainty now." He took both her hands in his eyes never leaving her face. "Josephine Taylor, I love you. I've loved you since that first night, and every day since has only deepened that feeling. You've brought music and joy not just to this community but to my life personally, in ways I never thought possible." Josephine's heart swelled with emotion as Noah continued, his voice steady despite the importance of his words. "I know you came west seeking independence, and I would never ask you to surrender that. But I believe we could build something beautiful together, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small box. "Josephine, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" He opened the box to reveal a ring not ostentatious but elegantly crafted, with a small diamond flanked by 2 sapphires that caught the moonlight. "It was my mother's," Noah explained. "My father gave it to her when they decided to journey west together, to build a new life in this wilderness. I can't think of anyone who would honor her memory more than you." Tears welled in Josephine's eyes, not from hesitation but from overwhelming joy. The man before her had proven himself in countless ways over the months they had known each other: his integrity, his kindness, his support of her work and dreams. He was offering not dominance but partnership, not restriction but a broader life than she could build alone. "Yes," she whispered, finding her voice. "Yes, Noah Vance, I will marry you." His smile could have outshone the moon as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then raised her hand to his lips. "You've made me the happiest man in Montana Territory." In that moment, with the music from the dance floating on the night air and the stars witnessing their pledge, Josephine knew she had found home not in a place but in a person. The long journey from Boston, the hardships and uncertainties, had led her to this man who had seen her strength and her vulnerability and cherished both equally. Noah drew her gently into his arms, and their first kiss was everything Josephine had imagined, tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally parted, Both were smiling, their futures stretching before them as bright and clear as the moonlit night. "We should return to the dance," Josephine said eventually, though she made no move to leave the sanctuary of Noah's embrace. "They'll be wondering where we've gone." Noah chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her cheek. "They know exactly where we've gone and what's happened, probably taking bets on whether you said yes." "As if there was any doubt," Josephine replied, looking up at him with a teasing smile. They walked back to the town hall hand in hand, Josephine's ring catching the light as they entered. A hush fell over the gathering, followed by spontaneous applause when Noah nodded confirmation of the unasked question in everyone's eyes. Congratulations surrounded them from all sides, sincere good wishes from those who had watched their courtship unfold and now celebrated its culmination. Mrs. Turner was among the first to embrace Josephine, whispering, "Didn't I tell you he was smitten? Best match in the territory. Mark my words." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of happiness for Josephine. She and Noah danced every dance together, his hand warm and sure against hers, his eyes rarely leaving her face. When the final notes faded and the gathering dispersed into the autumn night, he walked her home beneath the stars, their future together now certain. On her doorstep, he kissed her once more, gently and with reverence. "Sleep well, my love. We have much to discuss tomorrow." "Such as when we'll be married?" Josephine asked, still adjusting to the wonderful reality of their engagement. "That and where we'll live and 1,000 other details," Noah agreed. "But nothing that can't wait for morning." After he left, Josephine stood in her small cabin, looking at the ring that now adorned her hand. Its weight was unfamiliar but welcome, a tangible symbol of the love and commitment they had pledged to each other. As she prepared for bed, her thoughts turned to the future, not just her own but that of Silver Creek and its children. Would she continue teaching after marriage? How would she balance her responsibilities as Noah's wife with her commitment to education? These questions would need answers, but Josephine felt no anxiety about the discussions to come. Noah had demonstrated time and again his support for her work and his respect for her independence. Together, they would find solutions that honored both their shared life and their individual passions. Sleep came easily that night, dreams filled with images of the life they would build, a home filled with love and music, children gathered around the piano, and always, Noah's steady presence by her side. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek and beyond. Within days, Josephine received a letter from the town council, assuring her that her marriage would not affect her position as teacher if she wished to continue. Noah, they explained, had been adamant that this stipulation be formally recognized, knowing how important her work was to her. This consideration touched Josephine deeply. Most communities would expect a married woman to retire from teaching, focusing solely on household duties. That Noah had advocated for her professional autonomy, even before discussing it with her, confirmed yet again the wisdom of her choice. When they met to discuss wedding plans, Noah surprised her with his flexibility regarding their future living arrangements. "I know the ranch is far from town," he acknowledged as they sat in her small parlor. "Too far for daily travel to the school, especially in winter. I've been thinking about building a second house in town, where we could stay during the school term. The ranch house would be our main home, of course, especially during summer and holidays." Josephine was stunned by this practical solution to what she had feared might be their most difficult challenge. "Noah, that's extraordinarily thoughtful. But building a second house is a considerable expense." He shrugged, taking her hand. "What good is prosperity if not used to support what matters? Your teaching matters to the children, to the community, and to you. I won't ask you to choose between your calling and our marriage." His words confirmed what Josephine had come to believe about the man she would marry, that his strength lay not in domination but in his ability to accommodate others' needs without diminishing his own convictions. It was a rare quality in any person, let alone a man raised in the often harsh environment of the frontier. They decided on a December wedding, after the fall term ended but before the worst winter weather arrived. This would give them time to prepare properly and allow for a honeymoon trip to Denver before the spring term began. Noah's proposed townhouse would be built during the summer months, ready for occupancy by the following fall. The intervening weeks passed in a flurry of preparation, both for the wedding and for Josephine's temporary absence from the school. She arranged for Mrs. Turner's eldest daughter, who had completed her education in Helena, to substitute during January while Josephine and Noah were in Denver. The wedding itself was held in Silver Creek's church, decorated for the occasion with evergreen boughs and red berries that brightened the simple white interior. Almost the entire community attended, along with ranchers and their families from miles around. Even Chief Running Elk and several members of the Blackfeet tribe came to honor the man they considered a friend and his chosen bride. Josephine wore a gown of ivory silk that Mrs. Bennett had helped her order from Denver, with a lace veil that had belonged to Noah's mother. She carried a bouquet of dried wildflowers and wheat, symbolizing both the season and their future together. Noah waited for her at the altar, tall and handsome in a new suit, his usual confidence momentarily replaced by visible awe as she walked toward him on the arm of Mayor Harrington, who had offered to give her away in the absence of her father. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, exchanged before Reverend Mills and the assembled witnesses with clear voices and unwavering conviction. When Noah slipped the gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, his eyes filled with a love so pure it brought tears to Josephine's. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Mills declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Noah's kiss was gentle yet possessive, a seal upon their promises and a beginning to their shared life. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors as Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Josephine felt a surge of joy so intense it nearly overwhelmed her. The celebration that followed at the town hall was jubilant, with abundant food, music, and dancing that continued well into the evening. Noah and Josephine moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes from all quarters. Chief Running Elk presented them with a beautifully crafted blanket, explaining through his interpreter that it symbolized the protective warmth of a harmonious marriage. Mrs. Hollister gave them a handwritten book of her best recipes, to ensure Noah doesn't waste away under the cooking of a city-bred wife, she teased. Most touching was the gift from Josephine's students, a handmade quilt, with each child's name embroidered along the border. "So you won't forget us while you're in Denver," explained Sarah Jenkins, who had organized the secret project. "As if I could ever forget any of you," Josephine replied, embracing the girl and thanking the assembled children for their thoughtfulness. As the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Noah whispered in Josephine's ear, "Are you ready to see our home?" Though they had decided to live primarily at the ranch, with Noah's townhouse to be built the following summer, Josephine had not yet seen the ranch house as a bride. She nodded, excitement fluttering in her stomach at the thought of beginning their married life together. They left the celebration amid cheers and good-natured jests, climbing into Noah's wagon for the journey to Crooked River Ranch. The December night was clear and cold, stars brilliant against the black velvet sky. Noah wrapped Josephine in the Blackfeet blanket, his arms secure around her shoulders as the horses trotted steadily homeward. "Happy, Mrs. Vance?" he asked, the new name still strange and wonderful on his lips. "More than I ever thought possible," Josephine replied truthfully, nestling against his side, "though I confess to some nervousness as well." Noah understood her meaning without further explanation. "We have all the time in the world, Josephine. Nothing needs to happen that you're not ready for." His consideration eased her anxiety. Though she had received the usual maternal advice about wifely duties from Mrs. Turner and Mrs. Bennett, the intimacy of marriage remained mysterious territory. That Noah recognized her apprehension and sought to reassure her rather than assert his rights spoke volumes about the kind of husband he would be. When they reached the ranch house, Noah surprised her by insisting on carrying her across the threshold in the traditional manner, despite her laughing protests about his back. Inside, the usually plain interior had been transformed. Fresh evergreen boughs adorned the mantels and stair railings. Candles glowed in every room, and a fire burned welcomingly in the main hearth. "Mrs. Hollister's work," Noah explained, setting Josephine gently on her feet. "She wanted everything perfect for your arrival as mistress of the house." "It's beautiful," Josephine breathed, taking in the homey elegance of what was now her domain. Noah gave her a tour, pointing out changes he had made in anticipation of their marriage: additional bookshelves in the study for her collection, a sewing room converted from a rarely used office, and most significantly, a small room off the main parlor where her piano now stood. "I had it brought over last week," he explained as Josephine ran her fingers lovingly over the keys. "Thought you might want it here rather than at the school during holidays and summer." Overcome by his thoughtfulness, Josephine turned and embraced him, her earlier nervousness forgotten in the rush of affection for this man who had considered her happiness in every detail of their shared home. "Play something for me?" Noah requested, his voice gentle against her hair. "Like the night we met." Josephine sat at the piano, considering what would be appropriate for this most important of evenings. Finally, she began the sweet, simple melody of "Beautiful Dreamer," the same song she had sung to calm the frightened horses during the storm that had brought them together. Noah stood beside the piano, watching her with such tenderness that Josephine felt her heart might burst with happiness. When the final notes faded, he offered his hand, drawing her to her feet and into his arms. "You sang to calm the horses in a storm," he murmured against her hair. "And I knew then you were the woman I would marry. Now here we are, and I still can't quite believe my good fortune." "I'm the fortunate one," Josephine replied, raising her face to his. "To have found not just a husband but a true partner, someone who values me for who I am rather than who he wishes me to be." Their kiss deepened, no longer constrained by the propriety that had governed their courtship. As husband and wife, they were free to express the love that had grown between them over the months since their first meeting. Later, as they lay together in the master bedroom that was now theirs, Noah stroked Josephine's hair, his touch reverent even after the passionate consummation of their marriage. "I love you, Josephine Vance," he whispered, the new name a caress on his lips. "Today, tomorrow, always." "And I love you," she replied, feeling truly at home for the first time since leaving Boston. "My rescuer, my friend, my husband." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white that matched the new beginning they had embarked upon together. Within the warmth of their room, Josephine drifted toward sleep in Noah's arms, certain that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the teacher and the rancher, united by a storm and a song and a love that would endure through all seasons.